Sammy Davis Jr. thought he was walking into a routine casino meeting. Instead, he discovered that the woman mopping floors was the doctor who had risked her career to save his life when segregation said she shouldn't. What happened next became the greatest act of gratitude in entertainment history. It was October 15, 1965, and Sammy Davis Jr. was at the height of his fame. He was headlining at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, selling out shows night after night, and living the kind of life that most entertainers could only dream of. But on this particular Thursday afternoon, he was dealing with something far less glamorous than show business: insurance paperwork. The meeting was supposed to be simple. The casino's insurance company needed Sammy to sign some forms related to his upcoming performances, standard procedure for a headliner of his caliber. He'd be in and out in 15 minutes, then back to rehearsal for that evening show. Sammy walked through the employee entrance of the Sands, past the bustling kitchen, through a corridor that most guests never saw. The casino's business offices were located in the back, away from the glitz and glamour of the main floor. This was where the real work of running a major Vegas operation happened: payroll, scheduling, maintenance, and all the mundane details that made the magic possible. He was early for his 3 p.m. meeting, so he decided to take a detour through the main casino floor. Even in the middle of the afternoon, the Sands was alive with activity. Slot machines chimed, dealers shuffled cards, and tourists from around the world tried their luck at the tables. As he made his way toward the business offices, Sammy heard the sound of a mop hitting the floor in steady, rhythmic strokes. He glanced over and saw a black woman in her 50s, wearing the standard gray uniform of the casino's cleaning staff. She was working methodically, her back turned to the casino floor, focused entirely on her task. There was something about the way she moved that caught Sammy's attention. It wasn't the motion of someone who had been mopping floors for years. Her posture was different, more upright, more precise. Even in this menial task, there was a dignity to her movements that seemed out of place. The woman turned slightly, and Sammy caught a glimpse of her profile. Something stirred in his memory, a recognition that he couldn't quite place. She was tall, elegant, despite her circumstances, with silver streaking through her dark hair. But it was her hands that made Sammy stop walking entirely. Those hands. He'd seen those hands before. They were surgeons' hands, long, precise fingers that moved with the kind of controlled grace that came from years of delicate work. Even gripping a mop handle, they maintained that distinctive steadiness that Sammy remembered from 16 years earlier. The woman turned fully, and Sammy saw her face. Dr. Sarah Washington. The woman who had saved his life. Suddenly, Sammy was 23 years old again, lying on a hospital bed in Detroit, Michigan, in the summer of 1949. He had been performing with his father and Will Maston at a small club on the city's east side when the appendicitis attack hit him like a lightning bolt. The pain was so severe that he collapsed backstage after the second show. Will Maston had rushed him to the nearest hospital, but 1949 was a different time. The emergency room doctor, a white man with cold eyes and a dismissive manner, had taken one look at Sammy and said, "We don't treat colored patients here. There's a Negro hospital across town." Sammy was doubled over in agony, his appendix on the verge of rupturing, but the doctor wouldn't budge. "Hospital policy," he'd said with a shrug. That's when Dr. Sarah Washington had appeared. She was the only black doctor on staff at the hospital, one of the few black female surgeons in the entire state of Michigan. She had been walking past the emergency room when she heard the commotion and saw Sammy writhing in pain. "This young man needs immediate surgery," she had said to the white doctor. "His appendix is about to rupture. If we don't operate within the hour, he could die." The white doctor had looked at her with barely concealed contempt. "Dr. Washington, you know the rules. Colored patients go to the colored hospital. By the time we get him across town, he'll be dead." Dr. Washington had replied calmly, "I'm taking him to surgery. If you operate on this boy, you'll be violating hospital policy. There will be consequences." Dr. Washington had looked at the dying young entertainer on the stretcher, then back at her colleague. Then there will be consequences. Get him to OR3, now. For the next 3 hours, Dr. Sarah Washington had worked to save Sammy's life. The surgery was complicated. The appendix had indeed ruptured, causing peritonitis that could have been fatal. But her skill and determination had pulled him through. Sammy had been unconscious for most of the ordeal, drifting in and out of awareness under anesthesia. He remembered fragments: the bright lights of the operating room, the steady beep of monitors, and most clearly, the calm, assured voice of Dr. Washington telling him, "You're going to be fine, son. Just rest." When he woke up the next morning, Dr. Washington was gone. The nurses told him only that his surgery had been successful and that he could go home in a few days. No one mentioned the doctor who had saved his life, and Sammy, young and focused on getting back to performing, hadn't thought to ask. It wasn't until years later that Will Maston told him the full story. Dr. Washington had been reprimanded severely for violating hospital policy. She had been suspended without pay for 2 weeks and given a formal censure that would follow her for the rest of her career. The hospital had made it clear that any future policy violations would result in her dismissal. But she had saved Sammy's life, and that was all that mattered to her. Now 16 years later, Sammy was staring at that same woman, and she was mopping floors in a Las Vegas casino. Dr. Washington looked up and saw him watching her. For a moment, their eyes met across the casino floor, and Sammy saw the exact moment when she recognized him. Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, embarrassment, and something that looked almost like fear. She quickly looked away, focusing intently on her mop as if it required all of her concentration. But Sammy was already walking toward her, his heart pounding with a mixture of emotions he could barely process. "Dr. Washington," he said quietly, when he reached her. She stopped mopping but didn't look up. "I'm sorry, sir, but I think you have me confused with someone else. I'm just part of the cleaning crew here." "No," Sammy said gently. "You're Dr. Sarah Washington. You saved my life in Detroit in 1949. Now she did look up, and Sammy saw tears starting to form in her eyes. "Mr. Davis, I don't know what to say. You can start by telling me, what happened? How did you end up here?" Dr. Washington glanced around nervously. They were attracting attention from casino patrons and other employees. "Mr. Davis, I really should get back to work. I can't afford to lose this job." "You're not going to lose anything," Sammy said firmly. "But I need to understand, you were one of the best surgeons in Michigan. What happened?" Dr. Washington was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "After that night with you, things changed at the hospital. They started watching me more closely, questioning every decision I made. Anytime I treated a patient who didn't fit their preferred profile, there were questions, investigations, disciplinary actions." She paused, still gripping the mop handle. "I stayed for 8 more years. I thought I could outlast their prejudice, prove myself so thoroughly that they couldn't touch me. But in 1957, I treated a young black girl who had been in a car accident. She needed immediate surgery, and her family couldn't afford to transfer her to the Negro hospital." Sammy could already see where this story was heading. "I operated on her, saved her life. But this time, the hospital board decided they'd had enough of my pattern of policy violations. They fired me. Not just from that hospital, they made sure I couldn't get hired at any other hospital in Michigan." "What did you do?" "I tried other states, but word travels fast in medical circles. No one would hire a doctor who had been fired for insubordination and policy violations. I lost my license eventually. They said I had failed to maintain professional standards." Dr. Washington's voice cracked slightly. 16 years of medical training, 12 years of practice, hundreds of lives saved. All of it gone, because I believed that a person's life was more important than the color of their skin. Sammy felt a rage building inside him that was unlike anything he had experienced in years. This woman had sacrificed everything: her career, her livelihood, her professional identity, because she had chosen to save lives rather than enforce racist policies. "How long have you been working here?" he asked. 3 years. I started in Reno, then came here when they had an opening. It's honest work, Mr. Davis. I'm not ashamed of it." But Sammy could see that she was heartbroken. This woman who had once held human hearts in her hands was now reduced to mopping casino floors. "Dr. Washington," he said, "I want you to know something. For 16 years, I've been living with a debt I didn't even know I owed. You didn't just save my life that night. You saved my career, my future, everything I've accomplished since then. You don't owe me anything, Mr. Davis. I was just doing my job." "No," Sammy said firmly. "You were doing far more than your job. You were being a hero, and heroes deserve better than this." Sammy looked around the casino, at the wealthy patrons, gambling with money they could afford to lose, at the opulent surroundings, designed to separate people from their cash. Then he looked back at Dr. Washington, one of the most qualified medical professionals he had ever met, cleaning up after people who would never know or appreciate her true value. "I need to make a phone call," he said. "Mr. Davis, please. I appreciate the sentiment, but there's nothing you can do. I'm 55 years old. Even if someone would listen to you, I haven't practiced medicine in 8 years. Too much has changed." "Dr. Washington, do you remember what you told me in that recovery room in 1949? She looked puzzled. "You said, 'Don't worry about what other people think you can't do. Focus on what you know you can do.' Those weren't just words to help a patient recover. They were words that shaped how I approached my entire career." Sammy pulled out his wallet and handed her a business card. "I want you to call this number tomorrow morning. Tell them Sammy Davis Jr. sent you. They're expecting you." Dr. Washington looked at the card. It was for the chief administrator at Sunrise Hospital, the newest and most progressive medical facility in Las Vegas. "Mr. Davis, I can't accept charity. This isn't charity. It's justice. And it's long overdue. But even if they were willing to consider me, I'd have to pass medical boards, prove my competency, start over as an intern. Then that's what you'll do. And every step of the way, you'll have whatever support you need." Sammy reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He wrote quickly, tore off the check, and handed it to her. Dr. Washington looked at the amount and gasped. It was enough to cover living expenses for 2 years while she prepared to re-enter medicine. "I can't accept this," she said, trying to hand the check back. "You can, and you will. Consider it payment for services rendered, with interest." "Mr. Davis," "Doctor," Sammy said, emphasizing her proper title, "you gave me my life. I'm just trying to give you yours back." 6 months later, Dr. Sarah Washington passed her medical boards and was licensed to practice medicine in Nevada. Sunrise Hospital hired her immediately as an emergency room physician, and within 2 years, she was head of their new cardiac surgery program. Sammy attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the cardiac wing, which the hospital had named the Sarah Washington Center for Emergency Medicine. During his remarks, he told the assembled crowd about a night in Detroit in 1949, when a young doctor had risked everything to save a life. "Dr. Washington taught me that real heroism isn't about taking credit or seeking recognition," Sammy said. "It's about doing what's right, even when no one is watching, even when there are consequences, even when the system is stacked against you." He looked directly at Dr. Washington, who was sitting in the front row with tears streaming down her face. "For 16 years, I lived with a debt I didn't even know I owed. Today, that debt is paid. Not because Dr. Washington needs my help, but because the world needs her healing hands." Dr. Washington went on to perform over 3,000 surgeries during her second medical career. She trained dozens of young doctors, many of them minorities, who might not otherwise have had mentors in the medical field. She never forgot the lesson that had cost her so much, that a person's life is always more important than policy, prejudice, or protocol. When Sammy Davis Jr. died in 1990, Dr. Washington was one of the pallbearers at his funeral. During the service, she spoke about their first meeting in that Detroit hospital and their unexpected reunion at the Sands Casino. Some people talk about guardian angels, she said. But sometimes, the person you save comes back to save you. Sammy Davis Jr. gave me back my life's work, my sense of purpose, and my faith in the power of gratitude. She paused, looking out at the packed church. But more than that, he taught me that recognition and respect don't always come when you expect them. Sometimes, they come 16 years later, in the most unlikely places, from the people whose lives you touched when you thought no one was paying attention. The story of Sammy and Dr. Washington became legendary in Las Vegas. It was told and retold as an example of how success carries with it the responsibility to lift others up, and how the most important acts of heroism often go unrecognized until someone cares enough to notice. Today, the Sarah Washington Center for Emergency Medicine still operates in Las Vegas, treating thousands of patients each year regardless of their ability to pay or the color of their skin. A plaque in the lobby reads, "Dedicated to the principle that every life has value, and that true healing begins with seeing the humanity in every person." Below that, in smaller text, it says, "In memory of Dr. Sarah Washington and Sammy Davis Jr., who understood that gratitude is not just an emotion, but a call to action." If this incredible story of recognition, gratitude, and the power of using success to lift others up moved you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to remember that the most important debts we owe are often to people we've forgotten. Have you ever had someone help you in a way that changed your life? Let us know in the comments about the unsung heroes who made a difference when you needed it most. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories about how gratitude can transform lives.